the Little Scribe, and I'm resurrecting the Dear Little Scribe show here with Tim Cliff, my honorary regular. How are you today, Tim?
I'm great. How are you?
I am awesome. I'm super excited to have you on the show today. And I just realized that I forgot to mute my feed. So you're going to have a little bit of like when you go listen to the D Live, like after the fact, just forgive me later because I think I like had it looping. Um, anyway, so today is a very exciting day. Not only is it Steam Blast Day, but also we wanted to do a special interview to talk about everything that entails social media wise, and also maybe give a little prepping to the SMT launch supposedly in this coming January. So, for those of you in D Live, which I'm not seeing a ton of you showing up yet, it is a weird Monday morning and it is Labor Day, so we understand. Just a touch Faye just popped in. Thanks, Just a touch Faye. I don't know if I read your name right, but thanks for showing up. And by the way, the first 5 visitors to today's show get a booster pack. So remind me if I don't write you down, because I've got a little like piece of paper here where I'm gonna write it down. See, 5 booster packs. So Just a Touch Faye gets the first one. I'm not seeing a Discord yet, so we're gonna give it just a couple minutes and maybe chit chat while people show up. And I thought it was really cool because D Live has a chat that's set up in the feed, like when you have the show. But the thing is that they don't have an app yet where you can feed it into your streaming, like your stream kit or your stream software. So I went online and I downloaded the app where you could fit the link and put it in, and I put it in and it didn't do anything. So I'm sure it's not them. I'm sure it's me, but I thought I was going to be so cool today and be able to show the D Live on my actual like feed. So what I might do is just pull it in from my desktop and you guys can watch that way in case we get some people. But anyway, so Tim, how's it going today? How you feeling?
Good. It's about 10:30 a.m. my time. I've been up since 3 in the morning, kind of getting all the final touches ready for the camp. Exciting. I've been organizing it with a whole bunch of people participating for the past 3 weeks, so it's really awesome for everything to be coming together, and today to be the big day.
So when you say you've been organizing with a bunch of people, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about social media people, Steam people, all of the above people?
All the above. So we have a Discord channel for the Steam Blast. I think there's about 200 people in there, and it's all the people that have been working behind the scenes for the past couple weeks to get everything organized. We've been coming up with talking points, working to get an article written that has information about Steam. I've been coordinating to get paid advertisements on social media, doing a lot of networking, trying to reach influencers in various platforms so that we can get messages retweeted in front of a lot of people who have followers, all that type of stuff.
That's a really great idea. And by the way, when I first saw your Steam Blast post, I just got so excited because I'm like, you know what? If anybody can head up something like this, it's Tim. You've always been in the game. You've always been super dedicated. Like when I think of Steamians who are not just dedicated to the platform but dedicated to its success, I am telling you, you're like top 3 for me. I mean, there are few people who have as much determination to make this place amazing and to make it a top coin than you. So when I saw this, I'm like, yep, perfect guy, perfect opportunity. And so it's kind of a fun thing for me to be able to interview you and ask you about it. With regards to the social media, what were your plans? If you want to just maybe explain that, and that way when people listen, they'll know exactly what it is you mean. Some people like to read, some people like to watch and listen, so maybe break it down in the basics.
Sure. So the intention of the campaign is to be very organic. We're providing a structure and a framework for everybody in the community, but it's really going to be all the users participating in the campaign that's going to make it a success. So really what the goal is we want every single Steamian in the community to do things today to basically talk about Steam to the outside world. And what individuals are able to contribute is completely up to them. There might be someone who has a lot of friends on Facebook, so they could post something there. There might be someone with a large Twitter following, they might post something there. There might be people with high Reddit karma, so getting involved and talking about it in the Reddit community. Just all the various places outside of the Steam ecosystem where I know most of us spend a lot of our time, just trying to get the word out to the wider audience about all the great stuff that's going on in Steam. And we're trying to basically create like a viral type of feeling where Steam is getting talked about everywhere. It's really exciting. Everyone's, doing stuff and talking about it. And the hope is that, with all this activity going on, that there's some investors sitting out there who maybe they've heard of Steam, maybe they haven't, maybe they, counted it out a long time ago, but if they all of a sudden see all this activity going on, all of a sudden we're hoping that it is enough to get them to take a second look at the project and see all the awesome things that are going on.
Well, I'm sure there, I mean, if that came across someone's eye, it's just a matter of time before they go, wait a minute, I think I've seen this before, and what's all the hype? And you're right. If they're seeing it multiple times across several different venues over time, it really does just sink in. So to have a steam blast all kind of around the same time is a really brilliant idea. And we're not the first to do anything like that, but it is definitely one of those things that it takes a lot of coordination to perform. The first person I thought of when you said that was Luke Stokes. Do you guys keep in contact about stuff like this?
Yeah, we actually talk a decent amount. Unfortunately, I think he was traveling today, so he's not able to directly participate in the event, but he gave us support just as far as, being behind it and wanting it to succeed and all of that.
Woo! I have a fly like on my nose. Um, so it's seriously like kamikaze fly like coming in and attacking me. Because I look at Luke Stokes' tweet page sometimes, and he does talk a lot about Steam and EOS, and he does bridge the two together. He is a witness for both. Of course, I don't think the word witness is the one that they use on that platform, but what's interesting is that EOS is a top 20 coin now, and they're in their infancy as well. And of course, we have some overlapping development or developers in the name of Dan Larimer. I'm like juggling all these names. So Dan Larimer created Steam, and then he moved over and created EOS, and EOS is doing really well as far as how long it's been on just in the world, like on the block.
Yeah, actually, if I recall correctly, I believe it was into the top five cryptocurrencies before the blockchain was even up and running.
I was gonna say I felt like it was a top 10, but I didn't want to say for sure. So
Yeah, I
they
think it's sitting at number five right now.
number 5. Okay, and do you know where we're sitting?
We're hovering in the 35 to 39 range. We kind of bounce around minute by minute because all the coins in that range are at a pretty tight band. I can check here in just one sec.
So if we're somewhere 35 to 39 and EOS is top 5, I mean, you and I know the reason for that. It's not necessarily because they're so much better or because they're so much more functional. It isn't about that right now. I mean, the Steam coin really is an amazing blockchain. It's an amazing currency. It's very versatile. I mean, as we've seen, we've already had other developers come in and develop on top of it. Case in point, Steam Monsters, where Yaba P. Matt comes in and builds an entire functioning, thriving online tradable card game that is also a currency, Steam Monsters. The cards themselves have tradable value. And once he discovered that all he had to do was simply code a soft consensus blockchain laid over the top of the current blockchain, that took a lot of the work out of it for him because he was going to do his own blockchain because he knew that this is something he wanted to do. And then he realized he could just lace it right over the top. This is a huge implication for Steem and for SMTs at large. So I don't feel like, as far as functionality goes, that we're really any worse than the best coins. I mean, I'd say we're better than some of the best, like Ethereum, for example. What's your take on that?
There's a lot there. I mean, in terms of EOS, I think one thing that they've done a better job than we have is selling their story. I think in cryptocurrency, the stories and the narratives behind the coins really take on a life of their own. And a lot of times when people are buying a token, they're buying it because of the story that they've heard and it touched them on, some emotional or tangible level that basically got them, wanting to be involved in that project. And EOS did a great job at selling their vision and putting the message out there that people could relate to and see the value that was there. Like I said, even before the blockchain was functioning. And so that's one of the things that's kind of tying into this campaign that I'm doing is trying to kind of steer our messaging campaign a little bit more on track and get that narrative out there about how Steam is awesome. And if you compare it to the other coins in the top 20, it's pretty reasonable that we deserve a spot there. Um,
Okay, so because see, I see two things going on. I see a different story, but I also see loads of cash flowing into the coffers because, as I understand it, the and I'm sorry, but my best comparison is going to be EOS because that's who I consider our closest competition right now and the most viable, I guess, comparable. So because there's so many similarities, and they're created by the same dude and have a lot of the same supporters, from witnesses to users to whatever, what have you, investors. So I hope that the audience is okay with. I keep using that comparison, but what I see is that they just had a load of cash come in that first round before they had even launched, and I'm just wondering, what were people thinking? Were they like, oh, Steam was great, so this will be even better? Because I'm going to tell you right now, EOS would be nothing had it not been for Steam. Steam was like the springboard for it. It was kind of the precursor to his next development. And it doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter if it's better or worse. It's just like, oh, it's the next new thing. So I'm just wondering where they got all of the money on the ICO and why, or did we get that same amount and it was just kind of hoarded away? Like, what happened?
yeah, so I mean, I think we're talking about very similar things and just saying them in different ways. Just as far as the amount of money that flowed into that project was largely because of the story that was told, and the investors saw the project and the story and believed in it and thought that putting their money into it would be a positive thing for the investment. As far as Steam, just specifically on the ICO side, Steam never did an ICO. So the way that Steam was launched was basically the blockchain started with no ICO, no funding, no public funding for the project, and then basically as soon as the first block was produced, then miners were able to mine the coin. This was back when it was originally launched before the delegated proof of stake uh, protocol took over because there was no stake yet. So for the initial blocks, it was all done through mining. And the developers that worked for Steemit Incorporated controlled a very large share of the initial mining power, and they mined a very large share of tokens. And basically, they've been using the tokens that they've mined to fund the ongoing development efforts of the blockchain since it launched. So it was definitely a very different type of launch than EOS. From a legal perspective, the way that Steem did it was much safer, just as far as not really entering that territory of being considered a security. Whereas the way that EOS did it, I'm sure they've got a great team of lawyers and there's probably not too much to worry about there, but they were definitely walking a lot closer to that fine line between is their token a security, and that is something that the developers and the stakeholders and the users are all going to need to be mindful of going forward, is that if the SEC looks at that project, there is a risk there that they could look at what was done as illegal.
That was the first thing I thought of, because when Steem started, we didn't have an ICO, we had miners, and this ICO kind of business is very, very, I wouldn't say shady, because it isn't always shady. It's actually very forthcoming in a lot of cases, but it can be construed as unethical and even illegal, and can be illegal if you do it improperly and if you don't have the actual asset to back it up. So a lot of the argument out there, and I'm not going to make this all about EOS, but a lot of the argument or contention or controversy out there is, was there really a stake? Was there actually, the Fort Knox full of gold that they could back it with? And really, no, there's not. The whole point is that this is an initial coin offering, meaning there isn't a lot of coin there. So when you put a coin into it, you're essentially an investor saying, okay, I think this is going to work. But then you get into the whole, like, is this a pyramid scheme? Is it a Ponzi scheme? Is there really something behind it? I don't know. I don't know enough about things in general, let alone about EOS, to say. I, for one, am excited about that platform, so I don't have a particular disposition on the matter, but I do know that it begs the question when you get into ICO, and I know that Dan was initially very leery of doing an ICO for Steem, so I find it kind of interesting that he chose to do that for EOS. Do you know anything about that?
I'm not familiar with that aspect of how everything took place.
So when we get into January, where Ned is talking about we're going to have an SMT, a smart media token launch, is that not something quite similar to an ICO?
Okay, so just to make a few points of clarification, smart media tokens will allow ICOs to take place on the Steem blockchain. So a project can come along and basically launch their own SMT, and as part of that SMT launch for that particular token, they can do an ICO and receive funding for their project. As far as how that relates to the Steem token, the fact that other tokens are being launched on the blockchain and they might be doing things that classify them as a security, that, from everything that I've seen on the legal side, does not spill over into Steem itself being a security. And a really good example of that is actually Ethereum. The SEC actually took a look at Ethereum recently and asked the question, is Ethereum a security? And obviously Ethereum has hundreds, if not thousands, of coins launching on its blockchain with ERC20 tokens that they themselves are doing ICOs for. But despite all that ICO activity that was taking place on the Ethereum blockchain, the SEC determined that the Ethereum token itself was not a security.
Okay, so what you're saying is two things. You're saying smart media token ICOs are not a direct reflection of or implication towards Steem, because a smart media token essentially denotes that an individual organization or entity has taken upon themselves to decide what they're going to do with it. If they want to do an ICO, good on them, or bad on them, however they do it, correct?
Yes.
And so with Ethereum, you're saying that they did have some smart contracts that were doing ICOs, and it's not necessarily a reflection of or an implication toward Ethereum. But it sounded like you said that they might have done some of those.
Sorry, I think I'm not quite sure if I followed everything. So, to sum it up very quickly, tokens can launch on Ethereum, and those tokens themselves might be a security. But if a token launches on the Ethereum blockchain that's a security, it does not translate into the Ethereum token itself being a security. And to apply that to smart media tokens, when smart media tokens are launched on Steem, projects will be able to launch ICOs for their smart media tokens. Some of those ICOs might make those token projects considered security by the SEC, but the fact that that's happening on the Steem blockchain does not have a strong impact on whether the Steem token itself is considered a security.
Okay, yeah, that's basically what I was asking. So that is a good explanation, and I think I think I have a little preschooler crawling around behind me. So I'm going to ask you to talk about what do you know about the SMT launch in January? Like, do you know of any actual, I wouldn't say investors necessarily, but people who are looking to develop a smart media token and then maybe ICO it or invest it?
So a couple of things on that. First of all, just to clarify, it's going to launch on the testnet in January. The launch on the mainnet, which is what we would all consider the actual blockchain, is in March. As far as projects, there's been a lot of publicly shared information on that, just as far as various projects that are thinking of launching their own ICO. And I mean, whether there's other projects involved in the background privately is not really anything that would be discussed publicly, but I think just based on what can be seen in the public, there's a lot of excitement around that protocol for various projects that are looking to launch their own tokens.
Right. So we wouldn't ever really know who they are, but I guess we'll find out. And I feel like it ties in really well with what you're trying to do because the smart media token is essentially a way to grab external investors and businesses alike, right?
Yeah, and not that you can't do both, but I would say that the SMTs are probably more targeted towards the businesses, but the businesses themselves are likely going to be what bring in the investors.
That makes sense. So, what I had in mind was something maybe a little bit, I wouldn't say far fetched, but just because I feel like this is ultimately where we could be. And what I had in mind was something like, say, Amazon, for instance, where they have their regular users, whether vendors or buyers. And then they have people who go on and then they'll rate the individual who they purchased from. And so the vendors have a rating system where they're given some kind of ranking and a percentage, and then their product itself has stars. And my whole thinking is, why wouldn't Amazon want to reward people for engaging on their platform? So, for instance, the vendor for having a 95 percentage, like for every percentage above 95, they would get some kind of reward. And they could have a smart media token that's based on some blockchain out there. I mean, they could do it themselves, but then they would have to put their own coin into it. Whereas if they had a smart media token that's already based on some other coin and it has some intrinsic value, and they could do something of an ICO from their own company, and that would give it the more value, they could use that coin or token to reward their vendors for being excellent, and they could come up with some incentives for them. And then they could also incentivize some of their users, like some of the just regular people who come on to buy a product, and they could be rewarded for being a loyal customer, for instance. I mean, there's no end of things that they could come up with. So that's kind of what I see. It's not necessarily what will immediately happen, but I do see the world being that in a very few short years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's where we all see this heading, which is pretty exciting.
I think it could really be awesome. And then with people like Steam Monsters, where it's not like eBay or Amazon where you have a service or a product that's like a household item or anything. It's just a game. But in that case, it still is a very viable thing. The difference is that there would be a smart contract with it. So I'd be very curious to see how they develop a smart contract. And I honestly don't even know what that is. I don't know how it's going to work. And I don't know the technical side, but I do know that that's what there's a difference between a smart contract and a soft contract. And what I understand it to be is that essentially it incorporates it into the blockchain, as opposed to a soft consensus where you have your own server that maybe creates a block or produces blocks for your product as a separate item, but you're not necessarily verified on the actual blockchain. Am I getting that anywhere near correct?
It's in the general vicinity. So actually, let me throw out a couple more terms, and then I'll try to clarify soft consensus versus hard consensus, as well as smart contracts. And as far as smart contracts, basically what a smart contract is it's a rule that the blockchain automatically executes based on a set of rules. And there's a huge difference between the Steem blockchain, which is what is frequently called a specific purpose blockchain, and on the other side, you have the blockchains like Ethereum and EOS, which are more of a general purpose blockchain. And so the huge difference between those two is with EOS and with Ethereum, as an application developer, I can write code that basically puts whatever rules I want to on the blockchain, and then the blockchain will execute those rules. That's typically what people refer to as a smart contract. With the Steem blockchain, there are specific smart contracts there, but they're all predefined smart contracts that are written into the code. So as a developer, and this is what led the Steem Monsters group into using what was called soft consensus, the Steem Monsters group would not be able to just write their own Steem Monsters game logic and then have the blockchain execute that logic for them. The
Right. Because
Steem blockchain does not support general purpose rules that a developer can have the blockchain execute. Now, there are specific smart contracts built into the Steem blockchain. You could call the rewards pool a smart contract. If a user has a certain amount of votes, the blockchain will take tokens out of the rewards pool and put it in the user's balance. So again, the huge difference between the Steem smart contracts, though, and the Ethereum and EOS ones is the Steem smart contracts are basically coded in rules that are set, whereas the Ethereum and EOS blockchains, the developers can actually write the rules that the blockchain would execute. So, with that huge distinction, then the question becomes okay, well, as a game developer or application developer, whatever the application might be, how can I use the Steem blockchain to execute my code when I can't tell it to run my own rules? And so the way that that works is they basically create their own rule set, which is a public rule set that other people can audit and follow, and then they run their program based on those rules using the data that's stored in the blockchain. So the Steem blockchain can hold the data for their program, it just won't run any rules. But if they have the data in the blockchain and then they have what are called soft consensus rules, which are the rules of their game, everyone can verify publicly whether the data in the blockchain is following those soft consensus rules.
I think that was a beautiful explanation. Like my brain just exploded because I just love how you put things every time. So let me see if because I think there's another implication here, which is obviously if you have something like EOS and Ethereum, which have a wider general use case, like you were saying, then the advantage of that is that I could simply use whatever rules I wanted and then it would be incorporated in their blockchain open source, right? But with something like Steem where the rules are already hard set, you cannot tamper with those rules, but you could come up with your own kind of offsite and then maybe you could have something that correlates with it. So like say Steem Monsters wanted to incorporate a coin. And like when you play a video game, you can earn coins. Maybe what they could do is actually start a smart media token coin to reward their players and their investors. And then that coin could be based on the rules of the blockchain, and that coin would actually have an impact on the value of Steem ultimately because it's essentially a Steem coin. Am I seeing that right?
Yeah, although let me jump into something else which wasn't quite covered in either what you said or what I said, which is this difference between soft consensus and hard consensus really becomes apparent when you have a malicious actor. So let's just take Steam Monsters, even though I know the people that run that are awesome and they have very wonderful intentions.
Definitely
But
not
let's
malicious.
yeah, but let's just say that they went rogue and they decided to all of a sudden cheat. So if they have steammonsters.com, which is the website where everybody's playing, and that website is currently following those soft consensus rules, if they wanted to, they could basically change the rules on their website and just start going off and doing whatever they wanted, even if it was against the rules that they said they were going to follow. And because it's a soft consensus rule, the blockchain is going to still keep accepting the data in the blocks. It's not going to reject anything as an invalid transaction. And so it creates the ability for the application layer, which is not being run in the blockchain, to go off and do its own independent thing, which may not necessarily be what all the people using that website thought that they were agreeing to. Whereas if it was a hard consensus rule and it was, on the EOS blockchain and someone tried to basically change the rules, the blockchain itself would not allow that to happen because the rules themselves are part of the consensus.
So with a smart media contract, I mean, you can't just make up your own rules, or if you do, you can't change them. And that's the disadvantage of a smart media contract, is that you set those rules and they're stuck for good. Whereas with a game, especially when it's an alpha, you're going to want to change the rules. I mean, you're going to need to. And they're going to want to have, I mean,
Well,
otherwise,
let me correct here because you're saying a smart media contract. So the, the smart contracts are basically the rules. And the smart contracts are either soft consensus or hard consensus. So the soft consensus rules are basically rules where everyone's going to agree that they're the rules and they're going to follow them, but the blockchain itself has no way of enforcing those rules.
got
It
it.
relies it relies on the people who are running the applications to follow the rules that they have set. Now, it's all still publicly auditable. So if the Steam Monsters group all of a sudden started breaking their own rules and going off and doing some other thing that the community didn't agree to, everyone could say, hey, screw those, malicious actors. We're going to go and just create our own new Steam Monsters website, Steam Monsters 2.0, and we're just going to keep following those rules. But again, it's just the difference between the blockchain enforcing those rules versus the rules needing to be enforced somehow through an off-chain mechanism.
So they both have their pros and cons, it sounds like.
Yes.
And with Steam, it makes me curious as to why someone like Dan Larimer would have a platform like Steam where it's not as easy to do a smart media contract, whereas with EOS, you can just start right out. Or did I hear that wrong?
Well,
Or sorry, a smart media token.
so the smart media token is basically going to be a copy or a derivative of the Steam token. The smart media tokens are going to have very similar properties to Steam in that there's going to be a rewards pool. Users will be able to vote on content based on the amount of votes that a piece of content receives from a smart media token vote. The smart media token rewards will get distributed to that content. So it's very similar to just a lot of copies of Steam, except not a direct copy. They're all going to have their own little variations, their own rules, their own communities behind them. But the hard consensus rules of how a smart media token operates is going to be very similar to the hard consensus rules of Steam. And a good example of that is in version 1 of smart media tokens, all smart media tokens are still going to have a 7-day payout period. So regardless of what a smart media token creator wants, they are confined by the hard consensus rules that says a post or a comment is going to collect votes for 7 days. And at the end of those 7 days, it's going to receive its payout. So any application logic that they want to write that maybe pays content creators over a period of a month or a year, they're going to have to work within those constraints of how the hard consensus rules work and find a way to implement what they're looking to do within those constraints.
I mean, I can't see it being too tough because frankly, if you've operated on this blockchain long enough, you know that basically it's pretty straightforward. You put out good content, it'll get voted up. If you want to incorporate a rule like that on your own product or your own website, then essentially it carries over to rewarding good content. I mean, I've always been super stoked about smart media tokens. Looks like we have a couple of people. Just a touch. Faye says great explanation. Thanks, Tim. As usual, I agree. And then Eric Wilson, he says that the SMT's test net is coming in January and they are committed to a release in March, which I think we mentioned earlier, although I didn't say March. I know the test net is coming in January. I don't know what that means for us.
Yeah, so I touched on that on an earlier comment. So basically, the testnet is going to be completed in January, and then the protocol is going to launch on the main blockchain in March. And for those who aren't familiar with the testnet, basically it's kind of like a playground where everyone can use the system, but it's not going to be taking place on the actual live blockchain. So if I'm playing around and testing code and I accidentally send someone $100,000 worth of my tokens, that's okay because I did it on the test net. Those aren't my actual tokens on the actual
Whoops! Didn't mean to do that. Can I have that back, please? So another one that I'm thinking of is actually Reggae Muffin's Build Team. I'm sure you're familiar with buildteam.io. And
Yep.
as far as I understand, they've actually got their own coin generating on their own little blockchain. But for me, I'm thinking, man, maybe they should just do like a smart media token. Although I don't know what their application would be because they're really just a development company. They don't have like a bunch of users coming in, but I do see their products being a viable option because they have things like the Steam or it's failing me. I use it all the time. It's the Steam Boost. Steam it. Why?
Minnow Booster?
Yeah, the Minnow Booster. Thank you. The Minnow Booster, and then they also have Quick Steam where you can sign up straight with the blockchain, and then they have Steam Voter, and where you can delegate certain things. And I just think they're going to be coming out with a lot of products over time, and most of their stuff, if not all of their stuff right now, is 100% dedicated to, or rather correspondent with the Steem blockchain. So I can't see them looking at the SMT and going, no, we don't want to do something like that. Like people like them who are coming up with something outside the blockchain that is directly influencing or influenced by the blockchain, I can't see how they wouldn't also benefit from a smart media token on some level. I just,
Yeah,
like, I
I think
cannot
for a
wait to
lot of
see what
it,
people come up with. I'm so excited.
same here. I think where a lot of that is coming from is there's a lot of projects right now that are excited for SMTs and are planning to do amazing things once the SMT protocol launches. But at the same time, there's a period between now, it's just the beginning of September, and March of next year. And so for those projects that are looking for funding or whatever other things they need in order to get their project kind of moving along, they're coming up with other ways to basically do something in the meantime in order to supplement what they're hoping is and expecting is going to be there in March. I believe with the build team, if I remember correctly, they launched a token on BitShares, which is another platform that you can use to launch tokens. I don't know much about what that token is doing or the purpose of it, but my understanding of it was that it's somehow tied into getting them funding for them to be able to do their development projects. And I don't know what the people who buy those tokens are getting in return, but I think the purpose from the build team's perspective, from my understanding, is for them to receive funding in order for them to keep doing the development that they're doing.
That actually sounds like a likely explanation because I know that they do need, well, I don't know if they need funding, but I do know that they need, anyone who does the development that they do is going to need funding. So I can imagine that that would be the case. I also, I feel bad because I was going to touch on this, but I wanted you to maybe explain to our listeners what they can do to be involved in a steam blast today and how long the steam blast will be going on. And then maybe we could talk about that for the last 10 minutes of the show, and then if anyone has any questions. And by the way, Eric Wilson, I promised a booster pack to the first 5 listeners, so you're going to get a booster pack, a Steam Monsters booster pack, and so I'll go hunt down your account and I'll send one over to you.
Yeah, so obviously I'm very excited to talk about the Steam Blast campaign. It's kind of been my main focus for the last 3 weeks, and it's all coming together today. So we're actually about an hour and 15 minutes into the event as we're having this show right now. So it's about 12:15 Eastern Time. The blast started at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and the blast is going for 24 hours. So basically between now and 11 a.m. tomorrow, everybody should be hitting their social media accounts, going on to websites like Medium, Reddit, YouTube, wherever you have an audience of people, go to that audience and talk about Steam.
And you dropped a couple of links in the Discord general chat, and the first one is it's time to start paying attention to Steam, and then the second one is Steam to the Moon. Of course, that one's, is that the one that I did, or is that yours? No, that one's yours. Okay. Anyway, so you're talking about the Steam Blast, and if you want more details and more specifics, then you can definitely go there. But it's really pretty straightforward. I mean, go on to your Facebook, go on to your YouTube channel, make a post, go on to Reddit, go on to Medium, wherever you are connected. Just drop a blog post or a video or a chat with somebody about Steam, and maybe, I mean, it affects everyone differently. So for a photographer, they might get to talk about how they get paid to make photography. For me, I would talk about how I love promoting the Steam Monsters game and how I have a show every single week where we we group up as a group of fans, and we talk about the literature and we read the lore and we talk about the stats and the games and the trading. And that's my main thing right now. But also, I would talk about how, like right now, this is my social media contribution, and I'll be putting it out on my YouTube channel and on Twitter. And so I'll be talking about what's so important about Steam, why it's so amazing, why it's changed my life, actually, on many levels, because not only have I learned about cryptocurrency, but also I've been able to connect up with some of the most brilliant people I have ever met. I feel like the Steam platform is not just a social media platform. It tends to attract and keep the cream of the crop kind of thinkers and doers, because you're going to get people who really get the vision of what's possible with a blockchain. And although you're going to have spammers and scammers come through, they're not going to last on here, because people like us and like you and me are here to actually make something work and something succeed. For me, it's been the best thing ever, because when I go on my Discord chat or in my Discord inbox, I find messages from some of the most accomplished people I have ever met in my life. And I'm actually having friendships and connections and business contacts made. Like, for example, on Thursday, I'm going to do a Steam Blast. It's a little bit belated, but Jarvie, who is a popular user on Steam, and he and Asgarth are the ones responsible for Steam Peak user interface and the Steam Peak market. I'm going to Comic-Con with him on Thursday, and we're just going to do like a little proselyting. Really, I mean, it's going to be fun. It's just be hanging out, but we'll bring some material and wear some t-shirts and chat it up. And I just feel like there's so many ways that we could be talking about Steam, and we could be talking about all of the different opportunities that are available. So whatever is an opportunity for you can't be that hard to share with others. That's kind of where I feel it goes.
Yeah, I think you did an excellent job explaining exactly what the Blast campaign is about, which is everybody kind of putting their own unique organic twist on it, but at the same time having a coordinated effort where we're all just going out there and talking about Steam. I'll just add a couple more things, which is I want to highlight those two posts that you mentioned. I normally don't like to purposely draw attention to my blog when I'm on these shows, but today it's a little different. So I'm going to tell everyone go to my blog at timcliff, and the top two posts in my blog are both related to this campaign. The second one down is an article called "It's Time to Start Paying Attention to Steem." And this is a giant article that basically talks about everything that I could come up with about the Steem blockchain. I analyze things that went wrong. I talk about things that we're doing very well. And essentially, this post should be shared everywhere on the internet as much as possible, because if an investor is going to want to really dig into Steem and learn about what it does and whether it's a good investment, this post is geared towards that. It's basically written so that someone reading it can know what they're getting into before they make a decision about whether to invest in Steem.
So which post are you referring to?
That one is the "It's Time to Start Paying Attention to Steem."
Okay, so everybody, it's time to start paying attention to Steem. I mean, I'm not saying you have to re-steam it or anything, but that's usually what I do when I find something of value. And so if you're interested in re-steaming and upvoting and commenting on that, one of the things that we could do is maybe drop a link to that in one of our other external social media platforms like Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, I was actually about to jump in and say one of the huge differences. I mean, re-steaming is great, and I obviously appreciate that. But really, what I want to happen with this is that we take it and share it with the outside world. Basically, people not in the Steem community on a daily basis, people in Reddit, people in Medium, and really try to get that material out in front of eyeballs that aren't going to necessarily see it by being logged into the Steem platform.
So you said that you mentioned some things that haven't gone right with Steem. Can you lay out one or two of those right now?
I think one of the bigger ones that we're all very familiar with is the unequal token distribution. There's nothing wrong with some people having a lot and some people having a little. I think that's just the way natural economies work. You know, some people are at the right place at the right time. Some people can contribute more than others. So the fact that some people have a lot more tokens than others itself is not a problem. But I think the extreme difference in how much tokens the large token holders have compared to the new members who just joined and are basically starting out is so wide of a gap that it creates a series of problems. And I go into that a little bit more in the post.
I'll be looking forward to reading that. I also feel like, well, at least one of the presumptions with the smart media token that's going to be in test, or whatever you call it, in beta in January and launched in March of 2019, one of the presumptions about it is that this might have an effect on the disparity between the upper and the lower class. Like it might actually have an effect of strengthening the middle class. And
it's actually, in my view, going to be a game changer. And but real quick, can I ask how much time we've got left in the show? I don't want to go on too long of a tangent.
Well, we've got about 10 minutes, but I have to confess that I think I did my countdown wrong because people are just starting to show up. So if we go over by a few minutes, I don't know. Do you need to get going? You probably have a lot of people waiting for you.
I've got a lot to do, but I mean, if there's no hard cutoff, I think we can just keep going until we reach a stopping point.
Okay.
All right, so to answer your question, I think that smart media tokens are going to be a game changer for the distribution problem. And the reason is because every smart media token is going to be able to form its own distribution of tokens. Some of them are going to be fairer than others. Some of the tokens are probably going to fail horribly, but some of them are likely going to succeed. And what we'll see is that over time, as these SMT communities grow, there's going to be a community of people voting for content with SMTs, similar to how they're doing it today with Steem, but the holders of those SMT tokens are going to be deciding how that SMT gets distributed. And so, for example, if you have, I'm just going to pick a cat. You have a cat community, and everyone in that community just loves cats. And so you launch your smart media token, you know, we love cats, and everyone who gets those smart media tokens gets the We Love Cats tokens in their wallets, and then they start voting on content. They find the best cat posts, they upvote them. Now, those people who are getting upvoted by those SMT holders are likely going to be people who fit that ecosystem's vision of what they want that token to be. And those people who hold those tokens are going to have full control over where those tokens go. So you might have someone who hates cats and they love dogs and they want to come and downvote all the cat content. Well, they can, but unless they have purchased or received a large share of I Love Cat tokens, they're going to have no influence over the distribution of those I Love Cat tokens smart media token rewards. Does that make sense?
That was awesome. That was a really great example because really that does follow the same rules that we have here. The difference is, though, with a smart media token, it seems like we're making kind of a micro society. So my question is then, can you say I have a I Love Cats little thing, and I want to start a smart media token for I Love Cats. Do I need to have investors in that coin for it to be valuable, or will it simply take on the intrinsic value of Steem by default? And then if you want it to be valuable, more valuable, that's when people would be investing their own money into it.
It's somewhere in between. So at the end of the day, every smart media token is going to have a value based on what the market feels it deserves. Same with Steem. If people think that the token is more valuable than its current price, they're going to buy it. Price is going to go up. If people think that the coin is too highly valued, they're going to sell it. Price is going to go down. And so it's really going to be up to the individual SMT communities to add value to their token and create a demand for their token to bring in outside investment. Now, if you add the ICO protocol on top of it, they might do an ICO that says, okay, we're going to distribute 100,000 I Love Cat tokens, and you can buy these I Love Cat tokens before the protocol is released. So in order to get those tokens, people are going to have to put capital in. They're going to have to buy those tokens. They'll be buying them with Steem. And so that initial demand of wanting to have those tokens so that they can control the distribution once the token is going to get launched will be the initial demand for the token. And the SMT founders have the option of taking a portion or all or none of the proceeds that they receive from the ICO and basically using those proceeds to back the token once it gets launched. So just to give a hypothetical example, let's say that I sell $25,000 worth of I Love Cat tokens in my ICO. I might take $15,000 worth of those tokens and basically back trying to think how to explain it. I can back my SMT with the $15,000 worth of Steem.
Right.
By doing that, they're creating an intrinsic value in the tokens themselves, because if someone has one of those tokens and wants to sell it, there's Steem backing that token.
So sorry to interrupt, but let's say I have because my Steem Monsters show. Let's say I have a Steem Monster Show token and I get $20,000 of ICO, and then I use $15,000. And when you say $20,000, it could be Steem, or it could be US dollar, or does it have to be Steem?
So it's all going to get translated into Steem. I guess the dollar amount was just how much that Steem would be worth at the time that the ICO took place.
Okay, so I have $20,000 of Steem in my Steem Monster Show token. I use 15 of that to back it, and so basically my token is worth 50, whatever that percentage is, to Steem. So it's worth less than Steem. It just depends on how much I decide to back it with as an owner of that coin.
Yep, that's correct. And what's interesting is, so since it's backed in Steem, let's say that the price of Steem doubles, then essentially, if all things are equal, the price of all your SMT tokens would double as well, since they're backed by a set amount of Steem.
And I think that would be the hope and the assumption is that if you really wanted it to be a good investment, then you'd be smart, you'd be well to back it. Because if you're not backing your coin, okay, it's going to maybe grow, but maybe not. And if you want to attract future investors and contributors to your particular little corner, then you're going to want to back it.
Yeah, but just to make a clarification, because there's a lot of different ways that a founder can add value to their token. They might decide that they're not going to back the token with any steam, but instead they're going to use all the money that they earned to develop some really awesome app that everyone's going to use. So they might be using those funds to pay a developer, even though the SMT tokens aren't backed directly by Steem. They might be adding value to that token in some other way that could create demand besides it just being backed.
I thought of that as well because I see it as something of a Kickstarter sort of a setup, like with Build Team IO. You know, maybe they would use it as a kickstarting kind of thing where they could use it toward developing better products for the platform, and then maybe they have something where they kick back to you either an end product or something that's fun like a hat or a t-shirt or maybe like ownership in stock or something. Like you can decide yourself what you want to give to your group.
Yeah, although be careful with that stock thing or you're going to have the SEC knocking at your door.
Right. This is getting really tricky, and I think it's creating new rules for the world, for the legal community, for the for the financial community. I know that there are some people who aren't happy, but here I live in the Salt Lake City area, and I kid you not, there's billboards everywhere that talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and blockchain. I mean, they're not everywhere, but this is Silicon Slopes. We're sort of a sister to the Silicon Valley, like with regards to headquarters of tech companies being here in this area. Within a 50-mile radius, we have some of the most prolific and important headquartered tech companies, Adobe and Microsoft, and I can't even name them all, but we have huge tech development here in this valley. And I'm just seeing, I mean, I have a friend who mines Bitcoin. That's not something anybody just does. So people talk about it here, and I kind of feel like I'm nestled in a really great place. Like I said, going to Comic-Con on Thursday, I think there's going to be a lot of tech people who will understand cryptocurrency more than they would, say, elsewhere. And I think we're positioned really well. I think there are some naysayers, though, Tim, and you know who they are. We have Sir Cork and we have Ats David, namely, who, frankly, I appreciate both of their perspectives. They both have a considerable amount of experience and knowledge and wherewithal, and I think it's good to have asked the hard questions, but negative or not, the question is, and the question remains, twofold. Number one, aren't we just basically a pyramid scheme when we do a smart media token, or even just a steemblast? And number two, are we prepared for heavy investors to come in and dump their own hard-earned cash into a platform where someone like a top bandit who bid bot votes all of their stuff up and then kind of pillages their own earnings and pulls from the you get where I'm saying, like they're pulling from the rewards pool, and so all of that smart media token that I invested in is now being pillaged by someone else who had more money to put into a bot vote.
Yeah, that's there. So let me start by saying, ATS David and Sir Cork and I definitely butt heads on a fairly regular basis. I know we have quite differing views, but I still respect their opinions. And to be honest, a huge amount of their thoughts went into my article. When I initially started writing the article, I was basically just kind of doing a shill Steem. Here's all the awesome stuff about Steem, go Steem, go Steem. But, the thought in the back of my head was ATS David and Sir Cork are just going to tear this article apart.
They will, and that's what's good about them. That's what I said, is you got to have those questions. It's good to have, because you're going to have people coming in with the same ideas of skepticism. So good for you.
And so kind of with that thought in mind, I created the article, and in my view, I think it turned out much better because I actually did take what I would consider a fairly balanced view. I obviously am still trying to swing the narrative in the Go Steam direction. I am writing
Right.
a positive Steam, uh, but at the same time, I did try to find that balance there and appreciate the fact that, not everybody thinks that the project is amazing in the same ways that I do. And there obviously are some real problems that we still have to work through. And so the article basically tried to touch on all of that. As far as it being a pyramid scheme, there's a hint of truth to that in the sense that anytime an investor buys a Steem token or a Bitcoin token or an Ethereum token, the only way that they're going to make money from that essentially is if someone else eventually buys that token for more money than what they paid for it. Which it's actually similar to how stocks work as well. I mean, generally, when you buy a stock, there's some stocks that pay dividends, but the majority of stocks are not dividend paying stocks. And so when you buy a stock, you're basically hoping that that stock value is going to go up and that at some later point in time you can sell it to someone else once it's worth more and then you've made money.
I mean,
So
essentially, because a lot of people who are coming in for the first time, they'll be like, "Where does the coin come from? Where does it come from?" And my basic answer is twofold. Number one, people do actually invest real money into it, but number two, the biggest portion of the money comes from inflation. Because on the market there's an exchange where people buy it up and they sell it and they buy it, and as they sell and buy it becomes a more viable coin. I don't know if that's too basic, but that's kind of how I see it.
yeah, I would agree with that. And just as far as the are we ready, I would say yes. I to Sir Cork's point, which him and I didn't even weren't able to come to even an agree to disagree on that. I think we just weren't seeing eye to eye. Um, he has the position, which I understand where he's coming from, that if an investor comes in and they don't have the interests of the platform at heart, that they're basically going to rape and pillage and extract value from the people that actually are contributing to the community.
Right.
Um, the thing is that if you look at, I look at investors as neutral. There can be investors that come in which are extremely pro Steem. They take their Steem and they use it for investing in Curie and investing in Steem Stem and all those other projects that are adding value, Utopian, etc. And there's others that are going to go on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, like Hagen, and they're going to create 10 posts a day of their own content. They're going to self-upvote it. Maybe they're going to downvote anyone who disagrees with them, and they're going to use their stake to benefit them. It's a reflection of what you see in the real world. I mean, there's people on one side of the spectrum, there's people on the other side, and then there's tons of people all the way in between. And really, I want to go after investors who are interested in seeing the value that the Steem token has and having them purchase the token with the hope that it goes up. As they hold those tokens, what they do with them in the meantime is really a decision that they need to make. And I think we as a community need to work on coming up with better ways that stakeholders can use their tokens in a way that they feel that they're getting a return on their investment, they're helping themselves to make money, but maybe channeling that into a more productive thing. And so actually in that first post that I mentioned, there's a project called Oracle D,
Okay.
and they actually work with large investors and basically work with those investors to come up with a long-term plan on how the investor can stake their money and use it in a way that A, gives them some type of return, but B, at the same time, does something that's positive for the Steem community as well. And so that's why I don't think it's wrong for us to be going out and getting investors, because they can end up in either bucket. I think going after investors is something that we should be doing. And then once we have those investors, there's a second problem we need to solve, which is, okay, how do we channel that investor's desire to make money into something that's both good for them and good for us?
Well, and if I can interject here, obviously, the more mature our investors are, the less likely, as you were saying, the less likely they would be to rape and pillage and plunder. We're going to be targeting investors who would be having the longevity at heart. I feel like it's not that hard to find someone who really means well. It really isn't. And even on the platform as it is, you're going to see who they are. You know who they are. You're not going to it's not that hard. So we do need to target people who we feel like are going to have the best interest at heart. And by best interest, I mean the longevity. So they're going to be in it for the long haul. They're not in it to pillage. They're in it for everyone to succeed. So that's part A. And then part B, yeah, they need to get something out of it. So what do you suggest? I mean, what more can a steemian, a lowly little steemian do who's just trying to take pretty pictures and make a little extra buck?
Well, so I touched a little bit on about that in my article, and I guess we're probably a little bit past the time, so I wanted to make a couple of final points, and then if you have any last questions, we can kind of wrap things up here. But I just want to draw attention to that other article that I posted, Steam to the Moon, Steam Blast is today, everybody read. So again, if you go to my blog, that's currently the top one there. That basically has all the information that everyone needs to know about how to participate in the Steam Blast event. Again, as Little Scribe said before, it's pretty straightforward. Basically, go out, talk about Steam. It can all boil down to that. But at the same time, that post has a lot of information that you can use to help do that more effectively. We have a lot of graphics that you can use. There's content that you can link to. There's videos that you can share. There's pre-written text. So, if you're not sure what to say, you can just grab something from there. Or maybe you can grab something from there and tweak it so that it fits, a little bit more you. But essentially, there's a whole lot of stuff in there that you can use to more effectively campaign today. And the last point that I wanted to make is keep in mind that this is an investor-oriented blast. So I still today even talk to a whole bunch of people that are like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to recruit my friend because he's going to be a great blogger. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to do that, go ahead. But I want to draw the distinction that really today is supposed to be more about focusing on bringing in people who are wanting to invest in the platform and basically bring capital to it so that they could basically earn a return on their investment. And so when you're messaging, just keep that in mind. Again, there's nothing wrong with going after more users and trying to convince people that Steemit is a great place to blog. But really what we're trying to go for with this campaign is to talk about the Steem blockchain and the Steem cryptocurrency in a way that's going to spark the interest of potential investors.
That was awesome. That was a perfect close, Tim. And actually, I just dropped the link where you have this memes contest for graphics and images that you guys can use in your social media blast today. And some of them are super hilarious. They talk about like 3-second Steem turnover, like the transactions. So yeah, we do need to kind of shift gears a little bit from just telling our little friends about it. It's a cool place to earn money to actually talking in a way that will attract investors, people who want to invest in Steem and invest in the smart media tokens. So this has been really wonderful, educational. Go check out the link in Discord. I will track it down and put it in DLive as well, but there is a lot that you can do. And today, the Steem Blast is essentially to go out and blast out all we know about Steem to attract investors. And Tim, I can imagine you're probably going to do another Steem Blast again. And so when you do, let me know and we'll make sure and get some people together so we can help you out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this event so far has just been an amazing success, even regardless of what the results are. We got around 200 people to join our Discord channel, and everybody is really actively engaged and doing a whole bunch of stuff. So I definitely think that keeping the energy and all the excitement going after the specific blast day is in the cards, but we're going to work on getting this event done first. So today our focus is on that, and after the event is over, we'll probably start having some conversations about where to go from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And thanks everyone for showing up. And Funnel, I'm going to give you a booster pack, even though you showed up so late. That's my fault because I told you the wrong time. So thanks everyone for showing up today, and go have a Steem Blast day. And let me know in the comments below what you have done to social media blast, because we just want to hear about it. All right. Thanks, Tim. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.